Welcome back. You're tuned into Bazaar Morning Call. Hope you're having a good morning. Well, for starters, the SJX is suggesting a bit of green, but there are plenty of stocks to discuss. So let's get straight to that. Nishal Maheshwari, CEO, Institutional Equities and Advisory at Centrum Broking, joins us on the show. Hi, Nishal. Good morning. Thanks so much for joining in. Well, Nishal, I wanted to ask you about Shree Cement before we ask you about some of the other stocks of the day. And that one's pulled back, close to around 10% in the last 1 week. The problem is that there is an IT survey that's going on. We don't know the contents yet of that, but there are some reports that suggest that it could be a substantial number, though the management says that it is unlikely to be the case, and they're waiting for clarity from the IT officials. How would you approach the stock? It used to be 30,000 at its peak. It's corrected a fair bit, and it trades at premium valuations. Your view at around this 23,000 odd mark?
Morning, Nigel. I think it's difficult to speculate what's going to come out of the IT situation. I think, but historically, I think a company has been pretty clean and do not expect much to happen out of this raid. Having said that, I think Shree Cement has always traded at a fairly steep premium to the market, and it continues to do so. So I think this correction should be looked at as buying opportunity. It has always traded well, basically. I think the volumes are going to be good. This quarter is going to be good, basically, the June quarter for the cement companies, cement industry as a whole, and I think Shree Cement in particular. So I think this could be a good opportunity to accumulate.
Nishal, morning. One of the newspapers indicated that Lupin is planning some potential restructuring. They're looking to carve out their API business to unlock potential value. And they went on to say that how Glenmark had also undertaken a similar exercise. So Lupin will now eventually get split into the formulation business and the API business. That's what at least some of the newspapers seem to be suggesting. How would you read this development for Lupin if it happens?
Morning, Rima. I'm not a big fan of trying to split the company and making it two and trying to unlock value. I think that is basically for the stock markets, for splitting the company and unlocking values, basically. But I think if there is value, I think investors are very smart. They'll find it. Whether it is within the company and outside, and I think market discounts it fairly well. So yes, I think Glenmark has done it. I think a lot more companies will try and do it, but we have to understand. I think API has a discounted value to the generics or to the domestic market, and that's the way it is going to get traded. So some unlocking of value is good, but I'm not a fan of that.
Okay. Got it. Nishal, morning, Prashant here. NBFCs, we're speaking with the management of Five Star a little later. That's a South-based, lend to sort of the lower strata, the economic strata, and very small ticket size. In a similar kind of way, some of these home finance companies like Home First, Aptus, etc. Aptus, we saw a very large block deal. Other segments, credit access, these have been doing well. And many have been pointing out that maybe as compared to banks, these are in a better place with rates at some point which will start to peter off, etc. Any thoughts? What do you like here?
So I think NBFC as a space has underperformed for a long time. And I think in the last 3-4 years, most of them have cleaned up their books. And NBFC as a sector, basically, yes, during the early part or during the late 20s, 2020 is what I'm saying, basically. They had their advantage, basically, over the banks. At that point in time, banks were in a slightly messy situation. But at the moment, what I see here is basically that the banks cleaned up books, and the excess of banks is outstanding, basically. We look at all large banks, basically, they have got access to everywhere. So I'm saying most of the NBFCs, if you want to take a call on them, so it's high risk and high reward kind of a situation, because I think all the normal lending opportunities, banks are everywhere. So one has to be cognizant of it, basically, that when they are getting into this kind of NBFCs, basically, it will be definitely higher risk and definitely higher reward. But given that the situation at the moment in the economy is very good, so one can look at a few of these. Our top pick remains to be in the SFBs, and we like Equitas out there. We like Ujjivan and Suryodaya in that order.
Equitas, Ujjivan and Suryodaya. Nishal, thank you very much for that. But do stay on. We've got an important conversation.
Get back to our chat that we are having with Nishal Maheshwari. Nishal, some of these smaller names, well, they have done very, very well. Parag Milk, I'm not sure whether or not you have a view out there. There's been buying by a notable fund or, Nikhil Vohra's fund, I think, so has been buying big time 6 cents here. They have bought close to 8 lakh shares as well. Any view on that name?
So, I think we do not have coverage on that, so I will not be able to give any formal view. But I think the stock has corrected quite a bit. And
yes.
It was a value play basically, and I think that's why you're finding funds basically long-term investors getting into the stock. Given that the monsoon is also now getting back on track, so I think the input cost for Parag is obviously the milk. So I think the cost may come down basically as far as that is concerned. So a good stock at these prices.
Any thoughts? Do you have any view on Landmark, the premium car dealership? There was some block and some large investors got in. Stock had a bit of a flip-flop, started higher by about 4%, 5% and ended down by that much. Any thoughts?
So, yes, I definitely have thoughts, though we do not have coverage there basically, but I have done some work. And interestingly, I think Landmark has done well. But if you look at the car dealerships across the world, Prashant, I think they trade pretty well. Most of the car dealerships, if you go across Europe or US, they are actually at a premium to the OEMs. Interestingly, in India, it's not so. Basically, people are still looking at the car dealerships compared to Maruti, and Maruti still trades at a good premium to that. But I see that changing here. Basically, there are several car dealerships out here, basically, and I think they are not done well. I think maybe a couple of them listed also. But Landmark obviously is being different because it's mostly premium segment. And the premium segment we've seen basically that continues to do well even in a downturn. When the economy is turning around, then I believe more car dealerships should get listed and do well.
Nishal, do stay on. We want to get in a few technical trading ideas as well. So let me... Nishal, you at Centrum Broking, you all would have chatted with a lot of brokerages over the last 2 months to get feedback, the demand on the ground in terms of revenues and margins. Any key sectors or companies which stand out in their commentary according to you? And especially where the commentary has differed from what they had to tell us in the month of April during their Q4 numbers. Just want to understand what has changed on the ground when you spoke to the corporates over the last 2 months.
So I think one thing which has come very starkly actually is that the retail demand in April and May has not actually pulled back. And it seems to be the same situation as far as June is concerned. So the rural demand, the retail demand across sectors, and it's not alone one sector, across sectors, footwear, clothes, everywhere basically the retail demand seems to be waning. So that has been a bit of a surprise to us basically because in general the economy is doing well. But somehow the demand doesn't seem to be coming back at the moment, and most of the, especially the lower end, and most of the corporates are still talking about either a rural issue or inflation. So these are the two things which have been highlighted by the corporates. Volumes for the FMCG also, I think, is going to be disappointing.
Okay. Thank you very much for providing that color. So retail demand has not improved, rural demand has not improved in the month of May, April, May, and perhaps even in June. That's what the feedback is. So this is going to affect all the apparel, the textiles, the footwear companies too, consumer durables also. Nishal, thank you very much for joining in.